Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter, and you've checked out the goal setting workshop. And this is part one of two parts. Part one is going to be dealing with you. Well, no, I should say the customer. Part two will be dealing with you. Part one here today, we're going to be talking about how do we really understand our customers to be able to set goals. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm sharing with you some content that you can use right now. And if you connect back with us next week, same time, I'll share with you part two, talking about goal setting from yourself. Now, all of this leads up to an online program that we'll be offering. I want you to check it out. 20 plus page workbook and a whole variety of other pieces on goal setting that's absolutely going to change how you look at next year. Now, a lot of this comes from, not a lot of this, but the genesis for this comes from my book, A Mind for Sales. And if you haven't read the book, A Mind for Sales, I do encourage you to pick it up because it's very much helping people get focused and get dialed in from a sales perspective, what it is and how they do it. Because let me tell you something, in this pandemic that we're in right now, the emotions play a much bigger role, not only for ourselves, but for our customers. Now, here's something I want you to think about. Is this how you look at goal setting? Is this how you're just driving down a highway? You know, if you were to look at your goals for 2020, I have a feeling they probably didn't turn out the way you were expecting. Yeah, I totally understand that. They didn't for me. But see, the problem is we can't allow ourselves to drive down the highway blind. Because when we drive down the highway blind, well, not blind, but we just don't know where it's going. We don't know when we're going to get there. What I want to do is I want to set the tone, I want to set the table, and I want to understand. But in order for me to do that, I've got to understand where am I coming from. Now, there are three levels of sales that we get. There's really only three levels of sales. I want you to look at this. There is repeat, get, and create. That's it. That's it. That's the only three types of sales are repeat, get, and create. Now let's kind of break this down. Repeat. This is existing customers. This is existing customers that we've had that we know are going to come back and buy from us again next year. So when we're planning for next year, we naturally want to plan what are going to be our repeat sales. Then there's business we just get. Well, what's the get? The get is the stuff that just falls in our lap. That's the manna from heaven. That just boom, pop. It's the phone rings. It's stuff that just happens and comes to you. And that's great. That's good. We like it. But the challenge we have to ask ourselves is how much of our focus is really spent on the third one, create. You see, what happens is if we don't plan, we will naturally drift towards repeat and get. And from a goal setting standpoint, you have to be able to break down all three separately. I was doing some planning, some annual planning with a company the other day. And I was walking them through this exact same process I'm sharing with you. And the VP of sales said, well, we're going to get really a tremendous amount of business from our existing customers. And that's great. That's great. But here's the deal. If you build your business plan around your existing customers, you'll never optimize the other avenues that are out there for you. That's what you have to focus in on. Now, think about this for a moment. We don't sell things. We don't sell things. No, we help people achieve what they did not think was possible. Today alone, there's more than 1,000 people that woke up needing what you have to offer, but they'll never know it unless you get in front of them. And see, from a goal setting standpoint, we have got to be factoring this in. And again, what happens is we find ourselves being willing to fall into being a rain barrel. Now, every year at the beginning of the year, everybody will sit there and start off and say, I'm going to prospect more. I'm going to prospect more. But they never do. Because what happens is they get reliant on the repeat and the get. They don't focus on the create. You see, I can't sit here and allow myself to be the rain barrel. If you're the rain barrel, you should stop listening to this right now. You should stop listening. Stop. Because what you're saying is that you're content with whatever falls in the barrel. You're content with whatever that repeat and whatever that get is. And that's it. Just end it. Just click out. I just saved you 20, 25 minutes of time. Yeah. You see, what I want to do is I want you focusing in on, and I don't know why my TV just died here. We're going to come back and fix this here. What happened here? If this doesn't come back on, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm not going to worry. Well, that is really strange. I've never had that happen before. There we go. There we go. Maybe I got too close to it. I don't know. You see, here's the situation. If you're the rain barrel, there's no need for planning. Like I was saying before we had this little glitch. Here's the question though. How much of your time is spent in the rainmaker mode? My objective, my goal from a goal setting standpoint, from a goal planning standpoint, is to say, I want to be spending more time rain making and less time rain barrel. Now, how do we go about doing that? Well, we go about doing this by really realizing two things. One, you do not close a sale. You begin a relationship, okay? I want you to keep this in mind because one of the challenges as a rainmaker, what I want to do is I want to rain make and ultimately then put those customers into the rain barrel. And see, when I rain make, I create new customers and I bring them into the rain barrel. And then what happens is they become the repeat. And that's great. That's excellent. But see, I have to keep in mind that my goal, my fundamental goal is if we have the ability to help someone, it is our obligation to reach out to them. You see, sales is about taking the customer to the better place. This is absolutely essential. And from a goal setting standpoint, you got to keep this in mind, which means what I want you to do is I want you to really dial in and say, okay, what are my outcomes? Well, what are my customers' outcomes? What are the outcomes customers receive when they buy from me? You see, in this pandemic situation, what we have to do is we have to realize that the outcomes we create must fall within the top one or two of the customer, or they're not going to choose to do business with us. Now, especially from a rainmaker standpoint, because think about this. I had a gentleman who was trying to call me, was trying to do some business with me. He even set up a meeting on my calendar for tomorrow. And it's very interesting what he has to offer. I'm kind of intrigued by it, but I had to cancel it because I don't have time because what he is offering does not fit into my top two priorities. If it doesn't fit into my top two priorities, it's off. It's off the table. What he has was a great service. It was a great product. No ifs, ands, buts about it. But it was not delivering to give me an outcome that fits in my top one or two. You see, so what I have to do is I got to first look at all the outcomes I create for my customers, and you do that by just taking a piece of paper, write down the customers, and you write down the customers on your right-hand column. You just write down the outcomes. It's not what you sold; it's the outcomes. This is absolutely fundamental because now what I want you to do in the goal planning process is I want you to look at your customers and break them into 4 segments, okay? From a goal planning standpoint, 4 segments. You have customers. You have existing customers. You have quiet, dark, lost. I'll come back to these in just a second. Third one is, prospecting funnel. And the fourth one is the ICP target. Okay, let's break down each of these. And you've got to develop your plan around each one of these 4. Okay, existing customers. This truly is the rain barrel. But I got to understand, are they still going to be in there? And what percentage of my business is going to be that? So I've got to make sure that I know who are my existing customers. But let's really focus in here on the quiet, dark, and lost. Now, what's quiet, dark? Quiet, dark, and lost. These may be very good customers, but they only buy from you every 2-3 years. They might be very good customers, but they've just gone quiet. You have no idea if they're still going to buy from you. And there's simply other customers that have lost. You know you've lost them. Now, I want you to treat this as a segment as you develop your plan for one very simple reason. Every customer in these three buckets here, so to speak, quiet, dark, lost, they know you. They know you. So therefore, they're already educated on you. They are and so this is a segment that from a goal planning standpoint, you need to make sure that you're zeroing in on. So I want you to begin thinking, okay, who are going to be the customers that you're going to put into this quiet, dark, lost segment? And I encourage you, take a piece of paper or create a file, and you literally start listing all them out. Because at the beginning of the year, I can't afford to have customers just fall away. Every year when I do this exercise, it is amazing. And I try to pride myself on staying current and staying really active with my CRM system and being really engaged. But I go back and it's amazing how many more I find, whoa, I let that one slip. I let that one slip. That's gone quiet. That's gone dark. And I make sure that I put them in there because I got to build time around those. The third group there, prospecting funnel. Okay, so you've got prospects that are in your funnel at one degree or another. Now, they haven't bought from you yet, but they're in your funnel. So again, you've done some work, you've qualified them. They're not suspects, they truly are prospects. And I got to make sure that I don't lose sight of those. So again, I'm creating, so I'm going to take another list here. I'm going to go into my CRM system and I'm going to begin breaking those out because I don't want to lose the effort that I've done to get those to that point in my funnel. They may be at stage 2 or stage 4, or stage 1, wherever, however you work your funnel. But I can't lose sight of them. And the last one is the ICP target. Here's where I want you to reassess who is your ICP. ICP, ideal customer profile. This is absolutely key. This is why I said at the beginning, you take and you do an exercise where you write your customers down and you write down the outcomes. And then you ask yourself, do these outcomes fall in their top 1 or 2 priorities? Because what I am finding is in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of all the chaos out there, needs change. And we probably need to refine our ICP. It doesn't mean we walk away from this industry. It doesn't mean we walk away from this channel, but it may mean we need to tweak it. Rather than going for companies that are $10 million or larger in size, maybe we need to go for $5 million larger in size. Instead of going for people who are only doing X, maybe I need to go for people who are doing X and Y. You see, I may need to change my ICP. So this is the time that you reassess. And the number one question that you have to be asking yourself is very simply this. Is the outcome I'm going to provide them with going to be one of their top priorities? How do I know that? The next step here. This is the next step. What you need to do is you need to ask, and I changed the name because I didn't want to put customer up on top because then you're going to think it's just customers, but client. So all of the 4 previous, okay, all of these 4 in terms of existing and so forth, I'm now kind of calling them as clients, okay? Okay? All right. Are you with me? And the questions that you need to be asking yourself, and you need to take each one of those 4. So you take the customers, you take the quiet, dark, lost, and you ask yourself, what is the percent of potential business I could be getting from them or I should be getting? These top 2 questions are really about you, and the bottom 2 are about the client. This top question, what is the percent? Because what I find is that many times when we look at existing customers, it's great. Wow, I'm doing a tremendous amount of business, but I'm only getting 30% of the potential. So from a planning standpoint, I have to sit there and ask myself, why? And I'm going to get to this in just a bit. You may have a dark customer. Well, they're a dark customer. They bought from me 3 years ago because they tried me, but well, clearly it was only 5% of the potential business. Or maybe it was a quiet customer. And you know what? You were getting 100% of their business. So you know what? I'm just not going to chase them for next year. If we get it, great, but I'm just not going to chase it. You see, what I'm doing here is I'm asking myself very specific questions because I want to begin to understand what's the potential. Second question, your threats. What are your threats to what you do? In other words, is what you do, is there a competitor that's going to come into the marketplace? Is there something that's going to fundamentally change your position in the marketplace to each one of those four segments? Looking at your ICP, is there a threat? Is there a competitive threat that I need to be aware of? A few years ago, I was brought in because I was asked to work with a building trades company that had a major competitor coming in. Because again, we had walked through this exercise, but when we identified this major threat, it changed significantly how the selling process was going to be. Now, these first two questions are really internal. The second two are about the customer, okay? Clients, customers. I have to be able to look downstream. I want to take each one of my customers, okay? So let's go back to this list here. We have existing, quiet, dark. So I'm going to take each one of my existing customers and I'm going to sit there and say, what's happening with their customers? I'm going to look at customers in my prospecting funnel. What's happening with those? What are their customers? You see, I have to be able to go downstream. If I can't go downstream, there's no way I can plan for it. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, because this is going to help me begin to understand what my potential is. This fourth one, what are the client's threats? Remember this example I shared with you just a minute ago in terms of customers saying they had a major competitor that was coming in? Yeah. You see, that was a major threat. So I have to ask myself, is this going to change fundamentally the customer? Is the customer going to be strong enough to be able to weather that threat? Because you may have in your prospecting funnel, you may have some customers that have such a significant threat that they may not be around a year from now. So you sit there and say, do I want to spend time with them? Right now, for instance, because of the pandemic, you look at the hospitality, the restaurant industry, you look at various industries, they're very much under threat. So you may have a segment of your business that deals with them. You sit there and say, how do I handle this? You may be in the hospitality business and you service food service operations, and you now have to look at it and say, if these operations do not have drive-through, guess what? They have a significant threat, because if they don't have drive-through, they may not be able to remain open should lockdown, should various levels of restrictions come into play or have come into play. You see, I've got to do this with all of my customers. Don't sit here and try to put yourself into a very fast bucket and say, well, I don't think my customers, no. You have to be able to take your customers and you list them out into one of these four grids. This is going to take you some time. It is going to take you some time. And then you begin to sit there and say, okay, what's the answer to these questions? Now, what this begins to do is this begins to really help you understand where to focus your time. But now I know what you're saying. You're sitting there saying, Mark, how do I go about doing that? Let me walk you through 4 pieces. How do I do this? 1, I have to look at the current state of the business. Okay. I got to look at the current state of the business in terms of the industry. I want to do a very objective, and please, this means you've got to spend some time out on the internet and look at what the industry is doing. It's not just the customer. You may have a customer that's doing really well in an industry that's sinking fast. Well, guess what? Chances are that customer is probably going to get sucked into that bad thing. So I've got to look at the current state of the business. I've got to look at the current state of business. And what do I do at the current state of the business? I also look at how is my business trending with them? What are my trends year over year? What was my business like 2 years ago with them? What was my business this year? I have to really begin understanding what's happened to my business and how I'm interfacing with them. Because there may be some issues in here as I look at current state of the business. Well, there are some delivery methods. There are some things some customer support issues that we've had to deal with that are simply not sustainable. They're just not sustainable. Okay. So then I've got to say, what do I have to change? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, have year-end conversations. Now, this is absolutely essential. And I'm going to walk you through 2 techniques that I want you to do. First technique in terms of year-end conversation, I want you to take all of your existing customers, all of your dead, quiet, lost customers that were of significant volume, and even those in the prospecting funnel that you haven't closed yet. That's okay. I want you calling them up. I want you calling them up and thanking them for their support in 2020. Call them up and ask them. Now, this is what's funny. You say, Mark, why do I need to do that? We send them a holiday card. We send them a Christmas card. No. I want you to pick up the phone and call them. And here's why. Because the key is this. You do this right now at the end of the year. And it's amazing how schedules begin to change. Schedules begin to go awry. And suddenly what happens is people begin having more time. You will have conversations that you've never had before. And you're able to ask questions. So, hey, what's on tap for you guys in 2021? What's on tap for you guys? What's happening next? What's going on? And what's very interesting is you will begin to glean key insights. They're going to help you from a planning standpoint. This is going to help you from a goal setting standpoint. Because if you're talking to a customer and they sit there and say, oh yeah, well, and they kind of hint at something, and then you begin putting together the dots, say, wow, this could be a significant opportunity. That's huge. Or maybe there's a risk. But I love having year-end conversations. And the other approach is this, and you do this with your major customers across every channel that you're in. You want to have at least a couple of what I call top-to-top meetings, business review meetings, where you're calling the customer up and you're saying, hey, I'd like to get 30 minutes on your calendar. I want to review for you the business, how we've done. I really would like you to kind of evaluate for us how we've done for you. This works very well if you're in a business where you're dealing with consumables, even if it's not consumables. You sell a one-off item, but the customer continues to use it. You call them up and say, we're trying to measure our performance. And it's amazing the insights that they're going to tell you. You see, I love having year-end conversations because, again, as I do this business review, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's simply, hey, here's the business we did with you. Here's what we said we would do, and here's what we think we did. How do you think we did? It doesn't have to be fancy, but I love that approach. If you can't get that in at the end of the year, you make it happen in the first week of the new year. Third piece, boss meetings. Boss meeting. What's boss meeting? There's something magical about your boss being able to talk with some of your customers. You see, what's very interesting is you as a salesperson can have a conversation with a customer and they'll share with you information. But maybe this is a customer you do a lot of business with. Your boss can call them up and have a conversation with somebody further up the food chain. If you're an important vendor to them, they will do that. They'll have that conversation with you. Even if you're not an important vendor to them, your boss just calls them up and introduces themselves. Oh, it's boss man on the phone. It is amazing what the boss will find out. There's a KPI that I tell all sales managers that they need to have in the first quarter. And this is a KPI around the incremental opportunities that you've generated for your sales team for the year. See, what happens many times is sales managers feel that their biggest focus is in closing deals. They're going to help close the big, they're going to close the big deal. That's the only time they interface with a customer is to deal with a problem or to close the big deal. I want to get the boss on the front end. I want to get them on the front end. And when I get them on the front end and I get them asking questions, and I get them having conversations, and this is what's cool. It's amazing what doors open. If you can go all the way up the food chain, and I did this a couple of years ago, I was working with a very large multinational chemical company. And we were able to get the division president to reach out to some of their big customers and set up meetings. So divisional president with the CEO of a company that they were selling to. And this is the CEO of various companies that the salesperson was never, ever going to have a chance to get in front of. But the division president was able to have a meeting with them, and there'd be follow-up items. And the conversation goes like this. It's great. Hey, Mark is our account executive for you. I'm going to make sure that I tell Mark this, and I'll make sure that he follows up with you. Boom! Mark is now introduced to the CEO of the company. Wow! Huge piece. And it's amazing the conversations that come out of it. So when we look at planning for next year, when we look at planning and setting goals, this is how you get very, very tight, because you're able to find these incremental opportunities through conversations. Now, you may not be able to do that from a formal manner. I get it, but you can at least do it from an informal manner. It's just having that person pick up the phone and seeing if they can have a conversation. And it is amazing. No script, no formal approach, just a conversation. Because I challenge sales managers in the first quarter of the year. This is when you got to bring to the table incremental opportunities. We did this a couple of years ago with this large chemical company, and I remember having a meeting with them. It was right at the end of January. It was amazing the number of opportunities that they were able to create and capitalize on over the course of that year. This is one of the most successful hidden techniques. So when we talk about goal planning, goal setting, wow, this is huge. Fourth one, industry research and connections. This kind of dovetails on this first one I was talking about, but I can't stress this enough, because what you got to do is you got to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to take all my customers from all four levels. Remember, existing customers, quiet, dark, lost, prospecting funnel, and my ICP. And I'm now going to put them into industry buckets. And I've got to sit there and say, okay, what's the industry research that I've got to do? And I'm going to spend some time out on the internet looking and understanding, where is this industry going? I do a fair amount of work with the oil and gas industry. Now you sit there and say, wow, that business is really being ravaged. Yeah, but you know what? Yes, it's being hit hard, but there's a tremendous amount of growth opportunities within segments of it. And I wouldn't know that unless I was doing my industry research. So other piece is connections. You want to make sure that whatever industry you operate in, whatever channel you operate in, you want to have 5 subject matter experts that you can call on. I want you to create 5 subject matter experts. Now, you may not be in a position to create this 5 subject matter experts right now. I get it. That's okay. Totally understand. You say, Mark, you just shared this with me, but maybe you know 1, maybe you know 2. But then your objective over the next 6 to 9 months is to find 3 more. But you want to have 5 subject matter experts that you can be reaching out to, and you can be listening from, and you can be learning from. Because what does this do? When I do this and the industry research, it comes back and makes me more valuable with the customer. It makes me more valuable with those in my prospecting funnel. You see, what I'm doing here in this first phase, part 1 here today, is I want you to be looking at your customers in a different manner. Because otherwise, what happens is I see too many salespeople. Well, this was my number last year. So I guess I just better add 5% or add 10% or add 15%, or I'm going to get X number of new. That is garbage. That is absolutely garbage. And then I hear other people saying, well, there's no need for me to do any of that because this whole pandemic thing has thrown everything. So it's no use making goals. I said, no, that's wrong. This is your opportunity to actually get ahead further if you are willing to dissect this information. It's not a hard process. Now, I'm going to be going through part 2 next week. And more importantly, I'm going to be sharing, and I want you to get signed up. I want you to, it's only going to be $59. $59 for the goal setting program. And it'll be available next week. You'll be able to download the whole thing, the video series, the workbook, everything. But for $59, you're going to get an unbelievable goal setting process that's going to help you from a sales standpoint, from a customer standpoint and a personal standpoint. And I guarantee it, I'm going to walk you through in there strategies and ideas. And as you go through it and you watch the videos and you follow all the lessons, believe me, it's going to change your business for 2021. There is a tremendous amount of upside in business out there. There is. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless you set a plan for it. Now, if you haven't bought the book of Mind for Sales, I can't stress it enough. Please go out and grab the book of Mind for Sales. Because if your head's not in the right place, it's not going anywhere. But I'll be talking more about this in part 2. Hey, we wanted to go 30 minutes. We're right at 30 minutes. My email, mark@thesaleshunter.com. Send me an email. Let me know your question. Let me know your thoughts. Jump out to the website, thesaleshunter.com. We have the online university. This goal setting program is actually going to be part of the Sales Hunter University. And what's interesting is I'm asking you to say, hey, $59. For those who belong to the university, they get it for free. They get all of these programs for free. And we put 2 new programs out a quarter. That's a bargain. Yeah. And they get it all for free. And more importantly, they have unlimited access to it. That's what you want. Check it out, the Sales Hunter University. Hey, my name is Mark Hunter. There's my contact information, social media. I want to hear from you. Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. Great selling.